The Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, issued a statement from Simla on the 8th of August 1940 in the response of when Congress formally asked England to affirm its adherence to the goal of independence for India, which is popularly known August Offer. It was formal statement issued by the Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, that laid the foundation of constitutional framing, and Congress confessed for the formation of Constituent Assembly. The Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, issued a statement from Simla on the 8th of August 1940 in the response of when Congress formally asked England to affirm its adherence to the goal of independence for India, which is popularly known August Offer. Proposals of August's Offer. The establishment of an advisory war council. After the war, a representative Indian body would be set up to frame a constitution for India. Viceroy's Executive Council would be expanded without delay. The minorities were assured that the government would not transfer power to any system of government whose authority is directly denied by large and powerful elements in Indian national life. It was the first time the inherent right of Indians was recognized through constitutional framing, and Congress confessed for the formation of Constituent Assembly. The Congress rejected the August Offer. Nehru said, "Dominion status concept is dead as a doornail." Gandhi said that the declaration had widened the gulf between the nationalists and the British rulers. The Muslim League was happy on the veto assurance and states that the solution of political deadlock was only the partition. In the context of widespread dissatisfaction that prevailed over the rejection of the demands made by the Congress, Gandhi at the meeting of the Congress Working Committee in Wardha revealed his plan to launch individual civil disobedience. Conclusion. August Offer formal statement issued by the Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, that laid the foundation of constitutional framing, and Congress confessed for the formation of Constituent Assembly. Individual Satyagraha. Individual Satyagraha was the resultant of August Offer. It was started with the mass civil disobedience movement by M.K. Gandhi on individual Satyagraha. This was movement for not only to seek independence but also to affirm the right of speech. The demand of the Satyagrahi was using freedom of speech against the war through an anti-war declaration. If government did not arrest the Satyagrahi, he or she will move repeating it in villages and start march towards Delhi, Delhi Chalo movement. Individual Satyagraha was the resultant of August Offer. It was started with the mass civil disobedience movement by M.K. Gandhi on individual Satyagraha. This was movement for not only to seek independence but also to affirm the right of speech. The Congress once again asked Gandhi to take command towards the end of 1940, and that was lead to a mass struggle with broad strategic perspective. Aims of individual Satyagraha. To show that nationalist patience was not due to weakness. To express people's feeling that they were not interested in the war and that they made no distinction between Nazism and the double autocracy that ruled India. To give another opportunity to the government to accept Congress's demands peacefully. The demand of the Satyagrahi was using freedom of speech against the war through an anti-war declaration. If government did not arrest the Satyagrahi, he or she will move repeating it in villages and start march towards Delhi, Delhi Chalo movement. The centerpiece of individual Satyagraha was non-violence, which could be achieved only selecting the Satyagrahis. Acharya Vinoba Bhave, P.T. Jawaharlal Nehru and Brahma Dutt were the first, second and third the selected Satyagrahi respectively. Conclusion. Hence, individual Satyagraha was the outcome of August Offer to adhere the taste of freedom, and was movement for not only to seek independence but also to affirm the right of speech. Cripps Mission. In early 1942, the war situation compelled the British to open talks with the Indian leaders. The British forces had suffered heavy defeats at the hands of the Japanese army in many countries of Southeast Asia. The Japanese also conducted air raids on some parts of India. At this time Sir Stafford Cripps, a British minister, came to India to hold talks with Indian leaders. This is known as the Cripps Mission. The talks, however, failed. The British were not willing to agree to the formation of a truly national government. They also tried to promote the interests of the princes. While they agreed to the demand for a constituent assembly, they insisted that the Indian states in the assembly would be represented by the nominees of the princes, and that the people of the states would have no representation on it. Proposals of Cripps Mission. An Indian Union with a dominion status would be set up. It would be free to decide its relations with the Commonwealth and free to participate in the United Nations and other international bodies. After the end of the war, a constituent assembly would be convened to frame a new constitution. Members of this assembly would be partly elected by the provincial assemblies through proportional representation and partly nominated by the princes. The British government would accept the new constitution only on the following conditions. Sad Smiley A. Any province not willing to join the union could have a separate constitution and form a separate union, and b. The new constitution-making body and the British government would negotiate a treaty to effect the transfer of power and to safeguard racial and religious minorities. The post of Governor-Generals would remain intact and defense of India would remain in British hands. Conclusion. Hence, mission was sent to seek the full support of India to the British in Second World War. So, Stafford Cripps returned home leaving behind a frustrated and embittered Indian people, who, though still sympathizing with the victims of fascist aggression, felt that the existing situation in the country had become intolerable and that the time had come for a final assault on imperialism. Quit India Movement Day 2021, History and Significance. Quit India Movement. The Quit India Movement is also known as August Kranti or August Movement. On the 8th of August 1942, the Bharat Chodo Andolan or Quit India Movement was launched by Mahatma Gandhi and gave a call do or die. In April 1942, the Cripps mission failed. Within less than 4 months, the third great mass struggle of the Indian people for freedom started. This struggle is known as the Quit India Movement. On the 8th of August 1942 at the Bombay session of the All India Congress Committee by Mahatma Gandhi during World War II passed a resolution of the Quit India Movement. This resolution declared that the immediate ending of the British rule in India was an urgent necessity for the sake of India and for the success of the cause of freedom and democracy, for which the countries of the United Nations were fighting against fascist Germany, Italy, and Japan. The resolution called for the withdrawal of British power from India. Once free, it said, India with all her resources would join the war on the side of those countries who were struggling against fascist and imperialist aggression. Journey of Mahatma Gandhi from South Africa to India. Quit India Movement Resolution. The resolution approved the starting of mass struggle on non-violent lines on the widest possible scale for the independence of the country. After the resolution was passed, Gandhi, in his speech said, "There is a mantra, a short one that I give you. You imprint it in your heart and let every breath of yours give an expression to it. The mantra is do or die. We shall either be free or die in the attempt." Quit India and do or die became the battle cries of the Indian people during the Quit India movement. In the early hours of the morning of the 9th of August 1942, most of the leaders of the Congress were arrested. They were lodged in prisons in different parts of the country. The Congress was banned. There were hartals and processions in every part of the country. The government let loose a reign of terror and there were firings, lathi charges, and arrests throughout the country. People in their anger also took to violent activities. The people attacked government property, damaged railway lines, and disrupted posts and telegraphs. There were clashes with the police at many places. The government imposed restrictions on the publication of news about the movement. Many newspapers decided to close down rather than submit to the restrictions. By the end of 1942, about 60,000 people had been jailed and hundreds were killed. Among the killed were many young children and old women. In Tamluk, in Bengal, 73-year-old Matanjini Hazra; in Gopur, in Assam, 13-year-old Kanaklata Barua; in Patna, in Bihar, 7 young students and hundreds of others were shot dead while taking part in processions. Some parts of the country such as Balia in the UP, Tamluk in Bengal, Satara in Maharashtra, Darwar in Karnataka, and Balasore and Talcher in Orissa, were free from the British rule and the people there formed their own governments. Revolutionary activities organized by J. Prakash Narayan, Aruna Asaf Ali, S. M. Joshi, Ram Manohar Lohia, and others continued almost throughout the period of the war. The war years were a period of terrible suffering for the people of India. Besides the misery caused by the repression by the British Army and police, there was a terrible famine in Bengal in which about 30 lakh people died. The government showed little interest in providing relief to the starving people. There is no doubt that the Quit India movement united the Indian people against British rule. Although most of the demonstrations were suppressed by 1944. But after Gandhiji's release in 1944 from the prison, he continued his protest and went on a 21-day fast. By the end of World War II, Britain's position in the world had changed dramatically and the demand for independence could no longer be ignored. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose biography, birth, death anniversary, achievements, contributions, and more. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose biography, birth, death anniversary, Parakram Divas, achievements, contributions, and more. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose biography. As per an official, the celebration for Republic Day from this year will start on January 23 instead of January 24 to include the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. PM Narendra Modi government focused to commemorate important aspects of our history and culture. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose was an Indian nationalist whose patriotism towards India has left a mark in the hearts of many Indians. He is famously known as the founder of Azad Hind Fauj and his famous slogan is Tum Muj Kundu, Main Tum Azadi Dunga. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose was born on 23 January 1897 in Cuttack, Orissa, and he died on 18 August 1945, in a hospital in Taiwan after suffering from burn injuries sustained in a plane crash. Subhash Chandra Bose is considered the most influential freedom fighter with extraordinary leadership skills and a charismatic orator. His famous slogans are Tum Muj Kundu, Main Tum Azadi Dunga, Jai Hind, and Delhi Chalo. He formed Azad Hind Fauj and made several contributions to India's freedom struggle. He is known for his militant approach that he used to gain independence and for his socialist policies. Date of birth: January 23, 1897. Place of birth: Cuttack, Odisha. Parents: Janakinath Bose, father, and Prabhavati Devi, mother, spouse, Emily Schenkel. Children: Anita Bose. Pfaff. Education: Ravenshaw Collegiate School, Cuttack, Presidency College, Calcutta, University of Cambridge, England. Associations: Political Party Indian National Congress, Forward Bloc, Indian National Army Movements, Indian Freedom Movement. Political ideology: nationalism, communism, fascism. Inclined religious beliefs: Hinduism. Subhash Chandra Bose, family history and early life. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was born on 23 January 1897 in Cuttack, Orissa, to Prabhavati Dutt Bose and Janakinath Bose. His father was a successful lawyer in Cuttack and received the title of Rai Bahadur. He did his schooling from the Protestant European School, presently Stuart High School, in Cuttack, just like his siblings. He did baccalaureate from the Presidency College. He was influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda and Raman Krishna after reading their works at the age of 16. He then was sent by his parents to the University of Cambridge in England to prepare for the Indian Civil Service. In 1920 he passed the Civil Service examination, but in April 1921, after hearing of the nationalist turmoils in India, he resigned his candidacy and hurried back to India. Subhash Chandra Bose Jayanti 2022, quotes, wishes, books, slogans, poems, and more. Subhash Chandra Bose and Indian National Congress. He joined Non-Cooperation Movement, which was started by Mahatma Gandhi, who made INC a powerful non-violent organization. During the movement, he was advised by Mahatma Gandhi to work with Chittaranjan Das, who became his political guru. After that, he became a youth educator and commandant of the Bengal Congress Volunteers. He started the newspaper Swaraj. In 1927, after being released from prison, Bose became General Secretary of the Congress Party and worked with Jawaharlal Nehru for independence. In 1938 he was elected President of the Indian National Congress and formed a National Planning Committee, which formulated a policy of broad industrialization. However, this did not harmonize with Gandhian economic thought, which clung to the notion of cottage industries and benefiting from the use of the country's own resources. Bose's vindication came in 1939 when he defeated a Gandhian rival for re-election. Nonetheless, the rebel president felt bound to resign because of the lack of Gandhi's support. Read 10 lesser-known facts about Bhagat Singh. Subhash Chandra Bose and the formation of Forward Bloc. All India Forward Bloc was a left-wing nationalist political party in India that emerged as a faction within the India Congress in 1939, led by Subhash Chandra Bose. He was well known for his leftist views in Congress. The prime objective of the Forward Bloc was to bring all radical elements of the Congress party, so that he could spread the meaning of complete independence of India with adherence to the application of principles of equality and social justice. Subhash Chandra Bose and Indian National Army, INA, or Azad Hind Fauj. An important development in the struggle for freedom during the Second World War was the formation and activities of the Azad Hind Fauj, also known as the Indian National Army, or INA. Rash Behari Bose, an Indian revolutionary who had escaped from India and had been living in Japan for many years, set up the Indian Independence League with the support of Indians living in the countries of Southeast Asia. When Japan defeated the British armies and occupied almost all the countries of Southeast Asia, the League formed the Indian National Army from among the Indian prisoners of war with the aim of liberating India from British rule. General Mohan Singh, who had been an officer in the British Indian Army, played an important role in organising this army. In the meantime, Subhash Chandra Bose had escaped from India in 1941 and gone to Germany to work for India's independence. In 1943, he came to Singapore to lead the Indian Independence League and rebuild the Indian National Army, Azad Hind Fauj, to make it an effective instrument for the freedom of India. The Azad Hind Fauj comprised about 45,000 soldiers, among who were Indian prisoners of war as well as Indians who were settled in various countries of Southeast Asia. Read, what were the reasons behind Indo-Pakistan War and its effects? On the 21st of October 1943, Subhash Bose, who was now popularly known as Netaji, proclaimed the formation of the Provisional Government of Independent India, Azad Hind, in Singapore. Netaji went to the Andaman, which had been occupied by the Japanese, and hoisted there the flag of India. In early 1944, 3 units of the Azad Hind Fauj, INA, took part in the attack on the northeastern parts of India to oust the British from India. According to Shah Nawaz Khan, one of the most prominent officers of the Azad Hind Fauj, the soldiers who had entered India laid themselves flat on the ground and passionately kissed the sacred soil of their motherland. However, the attempt to liberate India by the Azad Hind Fauj failed. The Indian nationalist movement did not view the Japanese government as a friend of India. Its sympathies were with the people of those countries which had fallen victims to Japan's aggression. Netaji, however, believed that with the help of the Azad Hind Fauj, supported by Japan, and a revolt inside India, the British rule over India could be ended. The Azad Hind Fauj, with the slogan of Delhi Chalo and the salutation Jai Hind, was a source of inspiration to Indians, inside and outside the country. Netaji rallied together with the Indians of all religions and regions, living in Southeast Asia, for the cause of India's freedom. Indian women also played an important role in the activities for the freedom of India. A women's regiment of Azad Hind Fauj was formed, which was under the command of Captain Lakshmi Swaminathan. It was called the Rani Jhansi Regiment. The Azad Hind Fauj became the symbol of unity and heroism to the people of India. Netaji, who had been one of the greatest leaders of India's struggle for freedom, was reported killed in an air crash a few days after Japan had surrendered. The Second World War ended in 1945 with the defeat of fascist Germany and Italy. Millions of people were killed in the war. When the war was nearing its end and Italy and Germany had already been defeated, the USA dropped atom bombs on the two cities of Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Within a few moments, these cities were burnt to the ground and over 200,000 people were killed. Japan surrendered soon after this. Though the use of the atom bombs brought the war to a close, it led to new tensions in the world and to a new competition for making more and more deadly weapons that might destroy all mankind. Rajagopalachari Formula, 1944 AD. The objectives of Rajagopalachari Formula were to bridges between the Muslims League and Indian National Congress arises due to the difference of opinion on two-nation theory and independence of India from British. C. Rajagopalachari was the veteran Congress leader, made a formula for the Indian National Congress and Muslim League cooperation to write off the political deadlock. Formula was supported by M. K. Gandhi, which was in reality a silent acceptance of the League's demand for Pakistan. The objectives of Rajagopalachari Formula were to bridges between the Muslims League and Indian National Congress arises due to the difference of opinion on two-nation theory and independence of India from British. C. Rajagopalachari was the veteran Congress leader, made a formula for the Indian National Congress and Muslim League cooperation to write off the political deadlock. Formula was supported by M. K. Gandhi, which was in reality a silent acceptance of the League's demand for Pakistan. Rajagopalachari's formula. Muslim League to support the demand for independence of Congress. League to cooperate with Congress in forming a provisional government at centre. At the end of the war, a commission would be appointed to demarcate the districts having a Muslim population in absolute majority and in elections to be conducted in those areas, including the non-Muslims, on basis of adult suffrage whether or not to form a separate sovereign state. All parties would be allowed to express their stand on the partition and their views before the voting or election. In case of acceptance of partition, agreement to be made jointly for safeguarding defence, commerce, communications, etc. The above terms to be operative only if England transferred full powers to India. Conclusion. The basic concepts of Rajagopalachari Formula was to engulf the gap between the Muslims League and Indian National Congress arises due to the difference of opinion on two-nation theory and independence of India from British. Desai-Liquid Proposals, AD 1945. M. K. Gandhi convinced that the British rulers would not grant independence to India unless and until the Congress and Muslim League reached some conclusion on the future of the country or the immediate formation of the interim national government. Hence, Gandhi directed Vallabhbhai Jivanji Desai to make another attempt to appease the League leaders and find a way out of the 1942-45 political deadlocks. Desai, being the leader of the Congress in the Central Assembly and a friend of Liaquat Ali, leader of Muslim League, met him in January 1945, gave him proposals for the formation of interim government at centre. After Desai's declaration, Liaquat Ali published the list of an agreement which given below. Nomination of equal number of persons by both in the central executive. Representation of the minorities, in particular of the scheduled caste and the Sikhs. The government was to be formed and was to function with the framework of the existing Government of India Act, 1935. Conclusion. M. K. Gandhi's attempt to resolve the political deadlock by persuading Vallabhbhai Jivanji Desai to make an attempt to appease the League leaders, but the proposal were not formally endorsed either by the Congress or the League. G.K. Wavell Plan and Shimla Conference. Lord Wavell, who had succeeded Lord Linlithgow as Governor-General in October 1943, made a way out from the existing stalemate, the deadlock in India. He went to England for consultations in March 1945. He broadcast to the people of India the proposals of the British government to resolve the deadlock in India on the 14th of June, which is called Wavell Plan. It is also known as Breakdown Plan. Provision of Wavell Plan. Formation of a new executive council at the centre in which all the members except the Viceroy and the Commander-in-Chief would be Indian. All portfolios except defence were to be under the control of Indian members. In the proposed Executive Council, which was to have 14 members, the Muslims, who constituted only about 25% of the total population, were given the right to be overrepresented by selecting 6 representatives. The Congress, while objecting the demand, asserted its rights to select the representative of any community, including Muslims, as the Congress nominees to the Council. Shimla Conference. Lord Wavell invited a conference of 21 Indian political leaders at the summer capital British India to discuss the provision of Wavell Plan. The Wavell Plan convened to agree for Indian self-government, which incorporated separate representation to Muslims and reduced majority powers for both communities in their majority regions. Discussion was stuck at a point of selection of Muslim representatives. Jinnah said that no non-League Muslim should be represented to the Executive Council because only Muslim League has right to represent the Muslims of India, whereas Congress said that they had no right to nominate any Muslim in the Executive Council. Wavell had given place to 6 Muslims in the Executive Council of 14, and British had given it the power of veto to any constitutional proposal which was not in its interest. But Muslims represented only 25% of Indian population. Thus, these unreasonable demands were rejected by Congress. The Muslim League did not relent and Wavell dropped the plan. Conclusion. Wavell Plan was constituted to resolve the political deadlock of existing India, but he abandoned the proposals due to disagreement between leaders of Muslim League and Congress, and finally the proposals were dissolved at the Shimla Conference. On the 22nd of January 1946, the decision to send cabinet mission was taken, and on the 19th of February 1946, the British PMC Attlee government announced in the House of Lords about the mission and the plan to quit India. A high-powered mission of 3 British cabinet members, Lord Pethick Lawrence, the Secretary of State for India, Sir Stafford Cripps, President of the Board of Trade, and A.V. Alexander, the First Lord of the Admiralty, reached Delhi on the 24th of March 1946. Proposals of mission. The mission proposed to secure an agreement on the method of framing the constitution to the discussions with elected representatives of British India and the Indian states on proceeding and preparing. Proposes to set up a constitution body. Proposes to set up an executive council with the support of the main Indian parties. Purpose of the mission. To resolve political deadlock between the Indian National Congress and the All India Muslim League at their stance to prevent a communal dispute whether British India would be better off unified or divided. The Congress Party wanted to obtain a strong central government with more powers as compared to state governments. On the 16th of May 1946, this plan was announced and preceded by Shimla Conference of 1945. Recommendations of mission. The unity of India had to be retained. It proposed a very loose union of all the Indian territories under a centre that would control merely defence, the foreign affairs and the communication. The union would have the powers necessary to raise the finances to manage these subjects. All subjects other than union subjects and residuary power would vest in the provinces of British India. The princely legislatures would then elect a constituent assembly or a constitution-making body, with each province being allotted a specified number of seats proportionate to its population. The proposed Constituent Assembly was to consist of 292 members from British India and 93 from Indian states. The mission proposed an immediate formation of interim government at the centre, enjoying the support of major political parties and with the Indians holding all the portfolios. Conclusion. The main objective of Cabinet Mission was to find out ways and means for the peaceful transfer of power in India, to suggest measures for the formation of a constitution-making machinery, and also to set up the interim government. Interim Government, First Government of Independent India. On the 2nd of September 1946, the newly elected Constituent Assembly formed Interim Government of India, which existed till the 15th of August 1947. The executive branch of the interim government was served by the Viceroy's Executive Council, headed by the Viceroy of India. Since colonial rule, it was for the first time that the government of India was in Indians' hand. On the 2nd of September 1946, the newly elected Constituent Assembly formed Interim Government of India, which existed till the 15th of August 1947. The executive branch of the interim government was served by the Viceroy's Executive Council that was headed by the Viceroy of India. It was composed of 12 members, including 3 Muslims nominated by the Congress. It was for the first time since the coming of British that the government of India was in Indians' hand. On the 26th of October, 5 nominees of the League joined the government. Congress appointees redesigned to make room for the League nominees. 2 seats were already vacant while Mr. Sharat Bose, Syed Ali Zahir and Sir Shafat Ahmed Khan resigned. The portfolios of the composite 14-member government were as follows. Members of interim government: P.T. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vice President of the Executive Council, External Affairs and Commonwealth Relations; Vallabhbhai Patel, Home, Information and Broadcasting; Baldev Singh, Defence; Dr. John Mathai, Industries and Supplies; C. Rajagopalachari, Education; C. H. Baba, Works, Mines and Power; Rajendra Prasad, Food and Agriculture; Asaf Ali, Railways; Jagdivan Ram, Labour; Liaquat Ali, Finance; T.T. Chandrigar, Commerce; Abdurrab Nistar, Communication; Ghazanfar Ali Khan, Health; Jojendra Nath Mundal, Law. Show less. Conclusion. The Congress decided to join the interim government in response to the call of the British government to facilitate the process of transfer of power in August 1946. The interim government, which assumed office on the 2nd of September 1946. The Constituent Assembly of India, features and its committees. The Constituent Assembly was set up under the Cabinet Mission Plan on the 16th of May 1946. The members were elected by the provincial assemblies by the method of single transferable vote system of proportional representations. The Constituent Assembly met for the time on the 9th of December 1946, in the library of the Council Chamber, Delhi, and 205 members attended the meet. The League representatives and nominees of the princely states abstained. On the 11th of December, the Assembly elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as its permanent president. Committees of the Constituent Assembly. Committee on the Rules of Procedure, Steering Committee, Finance and Staff Committee, Ad Hoc Committee on the National Flag, Rajendra Prasad. Credential Committee, Elodie Krishnaswamy Iyer. House Committee, B. Patabi Sitaramaya. Order of Business Committee, K.M. Munshi. Committee on the Functions of the Constituent Assembly, G.V. Mavalanka. States Committee, Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee, Jawaharlal Nehru. Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities, and Tribal and Excluded Areas, Vallabhbhai Patel. Minorities Subcommittee, H.C. Mukherjee. Fundamental Rights, Subcommittee, J.B. Kripalani. Northeast Frontier Tribal Areas and Assam Excluded and Partially Excluded Areas Subcommittee, Gopinath Bardaloy. Excluded and Partially Excluded Areas, other than those in Assam, Subcommittee, A.V. Tokka. Drafting Committee, B.R. Ambedkar. Indian Independence Act 1947 Lord Mountbatten Plan, main features. Indian Independence Act 1947. Indian Independence Day 2021. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, several restrictions have been imposed to avoid crowding. The Union Ministry has issued instructions to the states and union territories to follow necessary preventive measures while organizing the celebrations of Independence Day. On June 3, 1947, Lord Mountbatten put forward his plan, which outlined the steps for the solution of India's political problem. The main purpose of the Mountbatten Plan was the partition of India and the speedy transfer of responsibility, initially in the form of dominion status. Basically, Lord Mountbatten came to India with an aspiration to the partition of India and the speedy transfer of responsibility, initially in the form of dominion status, to Indian governments for the sections of a divided India. Independence Day in India 2021. Important facts about National Flag of India. Mountbatten Plan. On June 3, 1947, Lord Mountbatten put forward his plan, which outlined the steps for the solution of India's political problem. The outlines of the plan are discussed below. India to be divided into India and Pakistan. Bengal and Punjab will be partitioned and a referendum in NEFP, Northeast Frontier Province, and Sylhet district of Assam would be held. There would be a separate constituent assembly for Pakistan to frame its constitution. The princely states would enjoy the liberty to join either India or Pakistan or ever remain independent. August 15, 1947, was the date fixed for handing over power to India and Pakistan. The British government passed the Indian Independence Act of 1947 in July 1947, which contained the major provisions put forward by the Mountbatten Plan. Partition and Indian Independence Act 1947. All the political parties accepted the Mountbatten Plan. 2 commissions were appointed by the British government with Sir Cyril Redcliffe as chairman of both to see through the partition and fix the international boundaries of the nations to be. At the time of independence, there were 562 small and big princely states in India. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, the first Home Minister, used the iron hand in this regard. By August 15, 1947, all the states, with few exceptions like Jammu and Kashmir, Hyderabad, and Chunagar had signed the instruments of accession. Goa was with the Portuguese and Pondicherry with the French. Conclusion. The Mountbatten Plan not only laid down the partition of India, but provides machinery for the areas affected by the Pakistan demand to choose, either through their legislative assembly representatives or through the referendum, between a single constituent assembly in accordance with the Cabinet Mission Plan, or a separate constituent assembly for a separate state. Hence, we can say that the main purpose of the Mountbatten Plan was the partition of India and the speedy transfer of responsibility, initially in the form of dominion status, to Indian governments for the sections of a divided India.